we'll get started. All right. I'm so excited to actually have people here and to see people again. It's been a while. We haven't done a Speakers Forge in a little bit. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's really nice to have you here. So in the spirit of being punctual and in the new year, I would like to just firstly welcome all of our speakers. We have an amazing group of people here today. So in the first session of our Speakers Forge, we are going to jump into something that we as technical people don't normally love doing, which is a lot of client engagement, a lot of discussion, and a lot of the times actually even understanding how the sales cycle works and how it fits into our daily lives. I know it's something that we don't always want to engage with, but I figured let's phone a friend and ask the absolute experts on how do you actually deal with these crazy things called stakeholders. So I've put together a team of our awesome sales managers, portfolio managers, cloud geniuses. The titles blend, but it's really good to have you here. So today's session is going to be a panel discussion. We've got a couple of questions that we're going to fire at these guys. I'll give you all a chance to also just introduce yourselves and tell us what you're about within Dariel for those who might not be part of Dariel who are listening in today. At the same time, the session is, as always, going to be recorded. It will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you have to drop off, please don't worry. You can catch up on there, although the live thing is always better. Please, if you haven't subscribed yet, go and subscribe, give us a like, give us a comment. Any interaction that you have with the channel really helps us to build an even stronger community of technical people who are passionate about learning and who carry the brand and our values even further. So without further ado, I'd love to just give it to you guys to introduce yourselves. Let's start at the top just because we're here. I'd love to know, Drew, give us the breakdown. How do you fit into Dariel at the moment? What are you doing?
Constantly trying to fit in, that's what I'm doing. But welcome everyone, thanks so much for joining us and thanks for having us in. So I'm the cloud practice manager at Dariel, which means I get to look after all of our cloud or division, I suppose, and all the dealings around our journey with partners and our cloud providers, as well as trying to get our pivot towards that technology base as well. So very exciting to work across all divisions of Dariel, bringing in that expertise.
That's fantastic. Matt, how about you? Give us the breakdown.
Hi everyone, I'm Matt. I head up the sales division at Dariel and also look for new business so we can diversify our portfolio as much as possible.
Okay, awesome. Mike, how about you?
My name is Mike Wright. I'm a client portfolio manager at Dariel, also looking after a couple of key customers, primarily Standard Bank, ABSA, and Life Healthcare, and managing the customer relationship and the client engagement.
Awesome. And then lastly, our fantastic Amy. Tell us about you, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Olley. I am currently the sales assistant at Dariel. I've been here for about a year and a half now. So I heard all the cats, basically. So the three on the screen, I help with all their admin, help with project admin, and all those good things.
And also come with all of the snacks and the best vibes ever, just saying.
Snacks are always welcome.
So maybe to kick us off on this, I'd love to know, Ames, can you tell us a little about what exactly is the Whiskey Club and how does that fit into Dariel?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the Whiskey Club is something that was brought into Dariel by Matt and Andrew when they joined us. And it really is a similar strategy to the base client strategy, which I'm sure you all know. It's the way that accounts are tiered within a business. So you have your target accounts, your grow accounts, your best account, your tactical account, and your harvest account. And so Matt and Andrew wanted to bring in a bit of difference into Dariel and make it a bit more fun in the way that we manage our accounts. So they changed this base client strategy and they renamed all of those 5 account categories after whiskies. Clearly very big whiskey drinkers, and they often do crack open a bottle of whiskey after they have made a sale. So it does fit well into our culture. So basically, just to give you a breakdown, our target accounts are called the Famous Grouse, just because that is a whiskey that is quite easy to get into when you're first starting to drink it. It's smooth. Then you move on to your Johnny Walker, which will be your grow accounts. And then from there, you'll go into your Macallan, which is your best accounts, because Macallan, I'm not a whiskey drinker, but I've heard is one of the best whiskies out there. And then from there, you go into your Monkey Shoulder as your tactical, because Monkey Shoulder, not something that you drink often, but it is always nice to have around and keep every now and then. And then our harvest account is our first watch whiskey, because that is one that, again, also not a whiskey drinker, but apparently is not the best. So you want to try and ease your way out of it as soon as possible. Yeah, so that's really something that Matt and Andrew came up with. And it is a way that the sales team can choose which work we want to work as Dariel, and which work we want to place our developers on, which clients we want to work with. And it also helps us to de-risk our relationships with our clients, identify which clients are needing a little extra push or need a bit of extra hand holding. And yeah, it just gives us a really great overview of what is happening within each account.
Absolutely. I love that. And just for fun, back in the day when we were in hardcore lockdown, there was a collection of whiskey in the office. Have we replenished our stock since then?
Still missing in action.
Yeah.
I figured. So just on this as well, I'd love to know, Matt, can you tell us a little about how we approach the sales function? And I know portfolio management isn't something that the industry really uses. So how do we approach sales? How do we approach the strategy? And what is this term that we use?
Okay, sure. So let me tell you how we set up from a Dariel point of view, from a sales point of view. So you've got a business development manager, such as, and I go out and I look for new business or for clients that Dariel hasn't worked with for quite a while. I then close some business in there, go and ring the big bell outside Greg's office, and then grow those into what we would say, I guess, let's refer them to the Whiskey Club names that we use, into a decent famous grouse or a target account. And then at a point where it needs a portfolio account manager, I would hand that over so I can continue to focus on looking for new business. And then people like Mike and Amy in the future, and what Andrew used to do, our portfolio managers, they have a portfolio of accounts which they treat as a business. They look at the account from a relationship with a customer point of view in order to grow the account to become maybe a Johnny Walker or a Macallan. They would also then look after the people in that account from a line management point of view. And then our number one value is, always delivering. They would make sure that we are delivering to our clients' expectation in those accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a good approach to really have an understanding of where the need is and go where the need is. So Mike, how do we actually then partner with new clients and accounts? What is our approach there? Mike, I believe you're on mute. Let me unmute you.
Well, thank you. So the approach with customers is always a consultative solution selling approach, where we work with the customers to identify what their business problems are and their business needs are, and then to become a partner to them and help them solve their business problems. And the worst way to approach a customer is always just to try and sell them something and tell them how many developers we have and what the cost of the developer is. It doesn't offer them any value. Whereas if you really work with the customers and understand what their need is, what business problem they have, whether they need to save money or they need a new solution to make them more money, or just a business problem that they're stuck with. How can we work with you in order to solve that problem and improve your business, rather than just working with them to just sell them something? And that's how we become trusted partners, by really being able to engage with the customers, understand who they are, and really work with them to solve their problems.
That's awesome. And I know you've got some experience doing a similar function in other places. How is this approach that Dariel takes a bit different to your previous experiences?
Exactly what I was saying. A lot of other companies will really work to just try and sell them people. So they're almost more placement agencies. We have this developer at this rate and we have that developer at this rate. And, our developers are so skilled that they'll solve your problems, but that's not really solving the customer's problems. And that's the big difference with Dariel is we really try and partner with our customers and we try and solve problems and make their companies better rather than just trying to sell them people.
Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of it being an actual human focusing on a problem over just, here's someone, go do things. And we don't know if anyone on either side of that conversation is actually happy. So there's a term that's come around and that we've used internally. And I'd love to know, Drew, can you tell us a little about what exactly is an opening batsman?
Yeah, sure. So there's a sport called cricket and kidding.
Thank you.
In the context of Dariel, we like to throw around the term as an opening batsman. But just to go back a little bit more to what a portfolio manager does and just tap up what the guys have already been talking about is the model of what we do is to go in and actually really align ourselves to our clients and actually gain their trust to obviously let us do what they are most nervous about. Because at the end of the day, software it's vapor until we've made it. And to take them on that journey, you have to gain their trust. So a opening batsman, when we are out in the market trying to penetrate into a new client or a new division or a new area, is a great way for us to show them what we can do. We take a trusted person within Dariel or trusted consultant within Dariel, and we place them into a set task or a set objective within a client, and we allow them to do what they do best with a lot of oversight from us and a lot of kind of interaction with the client. So they get the warm fuzzies that, we do know what we're talking about. We're not saying that we are this niche, wonderful technology company that can do all these things, but we actually put some butter on the bread and show them how it's done. And from there, obviously, the objective is to grow into a full end-to-end development cycle or to take ownership of one of their delivery pieces. Depending on the large corporates, usually it's a piece of work, but or the full end-to-end enterprise software solution. So that's always our aim. So to land someone as an opening batsman, even though they might be alone, which is definitely not our model, we want Dariel people feeding off Dariel people as a team. It's usually short term with a very set objective of what we're trying to achieve within that account or client.
Absolutely. It's almost like extending a little bit of a grace period for them as well to see that we are what we say we are. So in terms of our stakeholders and our engagements, Matt, have you ever been in a position where a client asked us to do something that was really unreasonable? And how did you manage that request?
Yeah, so I was asked out on a date once. And
What?
It gets quite tricky because often clients don't realize that you're in a partnership. And often, I can count 100 unreasonable requests. And when you're in a business like ours, we're a people-based business, and a lot of requests are unreasonable. They're unreasonable of our people, they're unreasonable of our processes, and they're unreasonable of our size business compared to the clients we work with. So a lot of the requests will come in for ridiculous times for our people to work, ridiculous rates that we need to suck up. I think the best way to handle it is treat your clients as a partner and remind them that you bring a lot of value, and just because they bring money to the party doesn't mean it's a completely fair exchange. And the more you work together with a partner, and I recommend this to our teams on the ground, is the immense value that you bring. You've got to realize that your client sees it as well. And we've always got to have a 1 and 2 relationship. It never has to be 1 over 2 or 2 over 1. It's a partnership.
Absolutely. You almost have to realize when that request comes in that you are there because you are an expert in what you do and you have a voice. And there's always support, especially in our space. If your client does come through with a request that is over and above, it's really just a matter of reaching out to either of you guys. So when
a client did
go.
travels to the US because his boss rejected his travel request and said he wouldn't give if I didn't pay for his travels. Not me personally, but I would have to find a corner of our business. And this was not in Dariel, this was in a previous company. And that in itself is very, very difficult to deal with. And that's where you actually really build on your relationships, you use your executives to get involved in conversations like that. And at the end of the day, we've come from a really tough country that's had to deal with these situations. And the best way to deal with it is ethically, openly, and honestly.
I love that. So did you end up getting this person their flight recommendation or flight allowance? What happened?
We didn't, none of the above. We didn't really escalate it. We spoke about it honestly, and I didn't want to bring the person into the light of dishonesty and corruption. It was just managed in a more honest partnership fashion where we didn't have to pay for people to travel if it was beneficial to the company and beneficial to them to travel to the US, they would foot the bill. And they did.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was actually very well handled. I see Chris has also commented and said you almost have to get to know more about your client's business than they do. And that is sort of the sweet spot between knowing what the client needs rather than just what they want. Because they're a mismatch. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Chris. So when things inevitably do go awry, as they do from time to time, how do you manage with your teams and stakeholders? I'd love to know, Drew, how do you manage that?
Yeah, John, so before I answer that, I mean, I also was an Unreasonable Requests. I had a client organize a working lunch, which he wanted me to pay for, and invite his wife and kids. I know that's nothing to do with the project, but I thought it was quite odd to have a business discussion with all these people around. But for what you've just asked, I love that you use the word when and not if. It is inevitable that, you know, these things that go awry within major software delivery are going to happen. So really it's a strategy of constantly manage that. I think with our world view is half science and half art, and it's the art half which is more difficult to manage. So when we've spoken about account management and portfolio management within Dariel and how we build relationship, it is really about getting really, really close to the beat of the drum of what's happening with your client, sympathizing with them, getting close to them, and really creating a trust partnership. That comes with open and constant communication. So at the point where a project is, you know, after 50 paper cuts is now turned into a terminal wound, it's too late to actually manage client expectations and to make adjustments. So we always try to steer the ship as things happen, because they will happen, and it's not trying to avoid the fact that things go wrong, either from our side, their side, or out of our control. So it's constantly managing that communication, those changes, that expectation change, and trying to stay away from the terminal bleed. Saying that, when those things do happen, we also need to sympathize. We are being trusted to do for people out there, and that's for all of everyone involved in our projects, from the developers, BAs, etc., is that we're delivering something to a very important person within our client that has promised something to his own boss or his own stakeholders or shareholders. So when things are not on track, it's their own reputation on the line, and they obviously want to try to get it back online. And there are going to be feisty words and whatnot, but it's to sympathize, understand that, and then manage, just try to reconcile the two. What we do into our own teams is to have, you know, retros, open communication, try to break down barriers, get the guys, you know, understanding where things go wrong, and try to pivot. We often try to bring clients into those retrospectives and try and move them forward, but really it's to avoid that level of awry, as you say, so which covers a lot of things. But before it gets there, we should have a really good idea, because of the relationship with those people.
Yeah, absolutely. You keep your finger on the pulse within those interactions as well. And hopefully then it's not just a bomb that drops without an unexpected discussion. But I love the concept of having compassion towards your clients as well. And I think this is something that applies whether you are a person working as a developer, or if you're working as a tech lead, or even an account person. That communication and understanding that there is a business and there are promises attached to what we do makes a huge difference. So I see Alison has asked us, you know, how do you manage the demand for talented developers between all of you guys? You know, everyone wants to place the right developer, but only one of you people can place them. So who does that, and how does that conversation work? How do we get the right person in the right place?
Perfect. Seeing as my mic is on, I'll keep talking. So really, it comes down, so the Whiskey Club is a big part of that. So we obviously have we're actually in the background, there's a lot of academics to it. So we have a whole balanced scorecard within our team, because, we're all out there, we're all ambitious, we're all trying to service our client and the partnership as best we can. But the other half of the equation is the talent and our people who are, as our recruitment team will testify, they go through a hell of a lot of effort to find the right person culturally and skill-wise for us to work with. So it is about finding that perfect marriage. What our balanced scorecard does allow us to do is to actually, if there are multiple opportunities for a limited skill pool, we will then score it according to what's important to Dariel, the right type of tech. Is it start moving in the cloud focus, for example? Are we working as a cohesive team? Is it got good growth potential to be doing strategic work, for example? Is there longevity? Is there stability within the cloud? So all these factors come into what we do, and we actually balance it out and take any human argument out of it. Obviously, everyone fudges their argument a little bit to get our one ahead, but at the end of the day, we do panel it and have a fair decision-making process just to make sure that we're always sticking to Dariel's values and what we want to be doing.
Absolutely. There's a fantastic quote by Rossabeth Cantor that says that when you consider a business and the profits in a business, it always needs to be tied to the values of a business. And that way you don't have the train just run away and go ahead of you looking for money above all. We start thinking
100%.
About people.
So actually, just on the question you had asked about, managing clients and when things are going, the best things that we can do as Dariel is perform in terms of just keeping that noise away completely. So if a client is expecting a certain amount of delivery or a certain product, if we can add more features or get it out done quicker than they expected, no one should ever be worrying about, but it's a 6-month contract and it's time and material, so we make more money. It's not our ethos at all. It's delivery above all else. Get the delivery out, win the credentials, win the trust, and the work will come. And that is where our portfolio management, I think, wins out really long-term partnerships with our clients.
Absolutely. I see Ross has also asked, just backtracking a little bit, how do you determine who is the right person to use for an opening batsman?
I'll answer that because I often have to go and find my opening batsman because I'm looking in new business to open new accounts. It really, there's no formula. It's based on people, experience. Opening batsmen tend to be senior developers or senior BAs or somebody that that has experience in really good client composure, but is also somebody that we've noticed comes to us with opportunities. They out there and they look for them. So you might not have been a senior batsman before, but you actually are aware that we're a business and you want us to grow, and you've come and said, hey, I've got this awesome opportunity, in my dad's company or wherever. I mean, that's happened fairly recently from one of our deeps from last year, came to me and said, hey, there's an opportunity in my dad's company. And to be honest with you, I would potentially take that person into the opportunity, and they could be the opening batsman, or I'd take somebody a little senior if there's some heavier consulting.
Absolutely, I love that. And then I think maybe to circle back to some of our stakeholder engagement focused questions, I'd love to know, Mike, how do you deal with it when you are, for instance, dealing with a client who is discriminatory, and perhaps through the lens of someone in that position? So both from the account management perspective, but also if you were a developer in that position, what do you do when your client is discriminatory in various amounts of ways?
So straight off, the most important thing is that Dariel does not tolerate or accept any kind of discrimination, whether internally or towards any of our developers. And this is very important. So if any discrimination does happen within the customer, or if you're exposed to any discrimination, the first and most important thing is to stay calm, because any reaction or inflammation can often make the situation worse. It's very similar in South Africa. If you see someone trying to steal something, don't try and stop them stealing it, rather call the police, because if you try and stop them, you can get involved in the situation. So in those cases, stay calm, try and extract yourself from the situation. And then the very next thing to do is to escalate it either directly to your team lead or to one of your portfolio managers, so it can be reported, and if necessary, even make a formal report. once we receive that kind of feedback, then it's up to us to then engage with the customer, their management, to report it and what has happened, was it occurred, and have that addressed as quickly as possible. And in instances where it's not being addressed, then from a greater Dariel perspective, we'll even start seeing about how we can manage a customer on a greater extent. And at the extreme, we'll then even start to extract Dariel from a customer if that discrimination is ongoing. So please, discrimination is not acceptable. If anything does happen, again, just remain calm, rather escalate it to your team leader or to one of the portfolio managers, and let us then manage it directly with the customer's management in order to get the problem resolved and to remove the discrimination from your workplace.
Absolutely. I think it's such a serious discussion, and it, unfortunately, in the world that we live in, it does happen from time to time. And the big thing that does come through, and please feel free to chime in if you guys have something to add, but the big thing that does come through within our environments is that as a technical person, you shouldn't need to fight the fight by yourself, whether that is your client asking you for unreasonable deadlines, or whether they're acting in a manner that is unethical or discriminatory. All of that, you don't have to do it by yourself. We are here to support you, and we want to be there to support our people. But open communication definitely enables that support a little bit better, and knowing when to escalate also helps. So I'd love to know, maybe on a bit of a more positive note, if you are in an environment, Ames, and you are a developer who sees an opportunity, or you see something in your client that you really want to pursue, how do you go about interacting with you guys to tell you, hey, I've got some cool stuff coming up, I want to pursue this?
Yeah, so I think the first step is really, if as a developer, go to your team lead, go to your portfolio manager and say, guys, this XYZ is happening in this space of the area that I'm working in. They require this. I think it's really important for you to reach out to this specific person and begin having discussions around how we could potentially help and expand our footprint within that client. I think finding out as much detail as you can first, obviously, is always great, but that's also our job as well. So if you tell us that there is a requirement, we will go in and we'll do the hard digging, and we'll sit down, we'll navigate around and see what is out there. But yeah, I think not being scared to go out, reach out to other people within the client that you're working at, to scout and do a bit of digging as to what is going on in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew,
is it possible I could add to that?
Yeah, go for it, totally.
No, I'd just like to say, as our developers and busy building solutions for our customers, you guys are closest to the actual situation on the ground. So, I mean, often, I remember when I was a developer, you'd be building something, and let's use a simple example. You just cannot get the stock code from the stock system, and it's driving you mad, and the interface is terrible, and it just doesn't work. Instead of taking that as the worst possible thing that can happen, that is actually a massive opportunity, because that means that the whole stock system is having an issue. There's potential that something needs to be fixed on that system, and that's where Dariel can again really help the customer to make their whole operation work better. So those are really great examples of where something's not working for the customer. That's problems that need to be solved, and that's what we do. So that's how it really helps, where you can spot those kind of opportunities.
Definitely. And I might be wrong, but Andrew, isn't this sort of how the cloud conversation started? I might be wrong.
Yeah, I think it is, because, very well, very, very astute. But yes, absolutely, because I think with any good opportunity with our clients, though we're there, we're building the relationship, we're getting the rhythm of communication. I mean, from our leadership team point of view. But really, the people they trust the most are the people on the ground. And, and again, I think the example you're hinting towards is when, it was within a major bank. We had one of our architects in there talking about solutioning and how we could get something working. And the word AWS came up, it was like 9 years ago, and whatever else it was. And we started building out AWS Institute to test it as a proof of concept, because again, the client trusts the people that have delivered for them. So yes, we're there. They trust us in terms of whatever they ask us to do will happen, or we can have negotiations and contracts and stuff that can happen on that level. But when it comes to the how do you make it work, they want to hear from the people that can do it. So that's another reason where having your finger on the pulse is so valuable. And yes, our first major cloud instance did come out of one of those conversations, a proof of concept. that was successful and a major instance that came out of it. And then the real value of what that brought is as an industry came out.
Absolutely. I think one more thing, just while we're on this, Rian was not able to join us today, but he has asked me to ping you guys a question, just in terms of how granular is the interaction that you guys have with a client when you start looking at a new engagement, and what is your expectation for your development team? So what is sort of that synergy between how much do you guys know about the project, how much would your opening batsman or your team on the ground know, and how do you make sure that there's smooth communication between you guys and the stakeholders on all of those fronts? So I don't know who wants to take this one.
Matt, you want to jump in or should I do it?
That's right.
Okay, cool. So from a new proposal point of view, so when we start engaging with a lead, which is not yet, we know nothing about what they want, we want to consult to them. We all come from various backgrounds within our own team. Once upon a time an accountant, and I have a lens on things from that point of view. Matt's been in business in this field for a very long time, as well as Mike as well from a development background. So we actually have a really deep skill set in our own right. So when we speak to clients, is to understand their problem first and foremost, as deeper level of what that is, then understand what that translates to in terms of what type of investment they're looking into in terms of an ROI, and then what an actual proposal that solves that investment need would be, and there's actually a viable solution for them. So we really do that first stage of consultation, as any other consulting house would. That's what we consult on. Then we'd bring in our Octo team, so led by Wayne and the like, to assign a representative to us to then have that same discussion on this is what needs to be achieved through technology. We then come up with a detailed technology plan. All of this gets composed into a proposal to the client. So at the point where a client accepts what we are there to do, we now, from a portfolio and division manager point of view, understand exactly what the project's outcome is supposed to be. We then hand that off to our team in the most granular level that we have at that point, and we give them freedom to run with it and engage their own relationships with the client. But the point is we do have the background. We are always checking in. We have the project governance oversight, but any point where a major escalation should happen, we do have the background detail. We do know what the original agreements were. We do know exactly what the original scope and spec exactly were. So we can always try to help bring convergence back into any discussion as well. So we're half delivery managing as well, but we do give our team the freedom to actually go out there and form their way with the client.
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe on that, Mike, as someone who was a developer in his past life as well, scope creep is part of our day-to-day life and something that inevitably pops up a lot. So when you are dealing with a client as a developer in Dariel, what do you now, having moved out of that role, expect that person to do? So a client comes and asks for a Ferrari when they are paying for a Fiesta. How do you manage it, and what do we expect from them?
Well, I think just a quick step back, if I may. Stakeholders, it's quite a broad term. Stakeholder can be anyone from your opposing team lead to the executive within a customer. So the important thing, I was talking more generally around stakeholders to start off with. Stakeholders, don't forget, it's a fancy term, but people are still people, customers are still people. And obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but mostly people want to just do their jobs and get things done. And if you're on the customer side, your job is to deliver a project, and you need to manage from a customer's perspective. So just try and wear their shoes for a moment. They've got a bunch of guys in their team and they're busy building something and they need to get it done. They often have a request coming through from one of their end users, and they need to then try and accommodate that request. So, when as a Dariel developer and you're dealing with customers and with people, the most important thing is just, really to keep things simple and straightforward. And obviously honesty is a given, but just really explain the situation and then allow them to understand, where and what is going on, because that's what they need to do. They need to, manage it from their perspective. They're busy doing something. You're working on a project. They've got deliverables, and they really need to know what the situation is. And that's typically how they engage with people in our team. So just giving them straightforward feedback, giving them straightforward answers, to the best of your knowledge, is always the best recommendation. Instead of trying to overcomplicate it or give different stories or different perspectives, rather keep it simple, rather explain it. And then, so say, for example, a customer comes and asks you, we need to change this whole screen. Is it possible? So the answer is yes, it is possible. We can move things around, we can do this and that, but please speak to my team lead, please speak to my portfolio manager if you know that it's a newer request or it's additional request. Because while it may be technically possible and your answer should be technically correct, yes, it is possible. The implications of that potentially go further than that. And those need to then be handled and managed with the customer and explained. And and the project could be delayed. It's not necessarily just scope creep for this, additional cost. It's also potentially the outcome on the deadlines. So simple answers, keep it straightforward. Yes, it can be done, but then just let us know. Don't do any. The typical thing then is don't start doing the work immediately either. Raise it and escalate it to your manager. If they ask you, can you start on this now? No, I need to double check how it fits into my other priorities and other things I need to work on. And just clear and simple communication is the best advice in this case. I mean, that also not only from a scope creep point of view, but from a general delivery point of view. If something potentially is not going to be delivered on time or it's running late, again, just keep it simple, straightforward. This is not going to be done by Friday. It's going to roll over to next week due to unexpected complexity. Now, the longer these things are left, if on Friday you then speak to the stakeholder and say it's going to be very late, the impact of that is much worse than a simple communication on Tuesday and the stand-up to say there's a risk coming up. So just, everyone's just trying to do the job, trying to get the work done. Everyone, wants to get their promotion and their increase and their bonus at the end of the year. And, that's what's generally driving everybody. So as long as we work in partnership, that's why partnership is important. We helping them, they're helping us. Just be honest and open and keep the lines of communication clear. And whatever is discussed directly with the customer, just make sure that your direct superior or your team lead, portfolio manager ever is also aware of it, so that if there is any greater implication, that can be managed. It's not, on you as a developer to solve the problem yourself in your little world. You are, your world fits into a bigger world, and everyone working together is where the success comes from.
I'll just add a little bit to that. I think, and it doesn't always happen. If you can put some team rules in place around priorities, it's a lot easier going back to that agreement and that set of rules to say, time is like, for example, if time was the most important thing for a project to land and scope creep becomes a reality, it's best to go back to those rules and say, are we going to break this rule? And if the team doesn't agree with it, and clients often override it, so it's you damned if you do, you damned if you don't. So I know a lot of you are thinking that, but if you can have a culture in the team that you're going to stick to the rules, you can often just push back and say, hey, let's stick to the rules and let's get out. Promise to get out.
Yeah, there's a term that is thrown around quite a lot in the sales world called swallow the frog, where we have to do the thing that we don't want to do first. And sometimes in these situations, I know it's not easy to push back, but do the thing that you don't want to do quickly, because the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to be. So just swallow the frog, do what you need to. And I see Wayne's also asked, how do we prevent being bullied into something expedient versus doing the right thing? So Drew, do you want to maybe take this one?
Sure. So again, these are the points of conflict that come up all the time. So, the major deadline, major release, they don't want to, I spoke earlier about, your client or your direct contact has made promises up the chain that they don't want to break. So they often just push the pressure down. So I think, again, it's all about that communication of what is possible and what's going to go. And if they are asking us to, just get a solution in, and it's not going to be the bells and whistles, and we know it's not sustainable, and we'll deal with it as post-production. I'm literally talking as I've got about 5 examples in my head where clients asked us to do that. We make sure that we, communicate that, we get their consent to do that, which I think is what Matt is saying, that they then sign on to the change of the rule that we want to do, and we do deliver it on their behalf, because but with the caveat that this is not right. So we obviously want to make sustainable, scalable solutions. That's the ideal. We do need to understand that there's a political landscape out there around our clients as well, in terms of the budgets that they actually have available, that should a first delivery not go in, the whole program dries up or something like that. So we have to be a little, again, empathize a little bit with what are they trying to achieve, and then make all of our views of why that might not be the best decision clear. And at some point we'll need to mediate. And that is where portfolio management, sales management, etc., can come in and help with that. So if you just ethically this is not going to be right, or I don't want to build non-sustainable stuff, that's going to be fixed later anyway, bring us in, we can mediate. And if it comes down that we have explicit permission to do so, we'll do so. You don't have to have that on your conscience either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such an important part, as it always comes back to that consultative approach, which is what we all learn and we all practice. And something that does come up quite a lot is that this is just baptism by fire. There's a lot of material and training out there, but when you are in that situation, that's when you start getting comfortable. So, Ames, I'd love to know, as someone who's recently started building these relationships, what is your go-to piece of advice when you are going into a new client for the first time? How do you start making those valuable connections?
I think what I've learned is just pick up the phone and call, and don't hesitate. Don't be scared about it. You just got to do it. I have started calling CIOs, CEOs, and I've just been terrified, but you just have to pick up the phone and you just call. And also, don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask them for their assistance, ask them for their guidance, ask your team around you, ask the people that you're working with for help, and ask people that you then have formed a connection with to grow into that account a bit more. Ask them to introduce you to key decision makers and have that introductory meetings with them. I think, but just do it and pick up the phone.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got moving into a new position was to go and make friends with every single senior person that you have, even if you have a digital coffee, to figure out who's who in the zoo. It really makes a difference to know who you're working with, and it gives you the ability to then connect. And it's not necessarily being that person's best friend and having weekends and braais with them, but it is understanding that there is a human on the other side, and that fundamentally you are coming with expertise because you know what you need to do. So we maintain that professionalism. But I love the concept of helping and asking for help, because that's what we're all about at Dariel, right? We're here to build and grow and support each other so we can all succeed towards a common goal. So
I'm actually going to put that up on my board. Just make it. I think that is.
We'll put it in the
office.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we're very adverse to actual conversations and phone calls and Zoom calls nowadays, but there's something different that happens when you actually pick up the phone and have that conversation with someone. So having an arsenal of some lame jokes also helps if you're feeling very nervous. So I'd love to just sort of touch on the cloud side of things. When you are starting new cloud conversations with clients, or maybe any new technology, how do you manage expectations? I know you're doing a lot of that at the moment, Andrew. So how do you do that?
Which you'd never ask. I'm so glad we're here. Okay. So with our clients, cloud is obviously a lot more established than it was just a couple of years ago within the market, certainly in South Africa. So yes, we are talking about AWS, Azure, a little bit of Google here and there as well, but really strong solutions in that space. Everyone you're speaking to is a little bit tailored. So in terms of what we are doing for them or how we're going to engage with them, in that everyone's on a slightly different stage of their, actually not slightly, hugely different stage of where they are in their cloud journey, from not considered at all, from, yes, we're looking a little bit at it now, to we're holding some data in the cloud, or we've done a lift and shift, all the way down to some really, really cool platform plays that are fully cloud hosted and enabled. So what you're doing is very much how those conversations and how you check in with how we're delivering is very much dependent on where we are with that journey. So earlier on in that journey, we are the consultants taking them on that first step into cloud technology, etc. So it's very hands-on, probably quite senior-led, architect-led, etc., because they need to know, can what we used to do still happen in being enabled by cloud, and how do we get there? Because it's quite daunting, and if I get it wrong, it's going to cost me a fortune. So we really need to be quite delicate with how we present our information out from there. And then once we start delivery, really checking back to what that original plan and consult was. But for the more advanced, kind of deliveries where we are building cloud-enabled platforms that are doing a multitude of stuff for our clients, it's very much about, it's pretty much the same as where we are as Dariel in terms of a software development lifecycle, testing phases, UAT, showing people what it can do, proving it. And those clients are a lot more enabled in the cloud. So it's just another step within the stack anyway. And that is why Dariel has transitioned to that world so well, is that we always had the wonderful problem solver, deep stacked technologists. And I just see it as, we're still application-led cloud provider. We are doing a lot of data work, a little bit of infrastructure as well, and we can help on the holistic solution, but where its application is where we really thrive and where we can really run that whole cycle, even bring up the DevOps culture, etc. And part of that culture will give you the comfort you need that your technology is moving in the right way. So it's very much tailored on that journey of where that client is.
Yeah, I see Chris has commented, it's all about communication and transparency.
It's about the only message we've been talking about today, but yes, 100%.
Yeah, like we might just have to do a Dariel tattoo where everyone gets communication and strict transparency tattooed somewhere. Maybe at our year start function, last minute tattoo parties.
Outside, perfect.
So I'd love to just sort of dig into something that is quite difficult to navigate as well. And that is the concept of when there is actual conflict inside of your team, potentially with your product owner or your scrum master or whatever the case is, or any of your stakeholders, how do you manage that conflict? So Mike, do you maybe want to give us some tips on conflict management in the teams?
Sure. So conflict always comes up. Humans, we rub against each other all the time. And, the first thing, obviously, always with conflict management is to stay calm. It helps. I know I've said that before, but it is important. As soon as emotions start running and it becomes a tit for tat and people start arguing, that's when the whole conversation starts to go down. So the next thing with conflict management always is try. I know it's difficult in the moment, but try to understand the other person's perspective and not to take things personally. Generally, the way people talk is quite direct and it can seem like someone else is attacking you when they're actually just trying to get their point across. So from a conflict perspective is, stay calm, try to understand the other person's perspective. They're not necessarily attacking you, they're just trying to make a point. Always try to argue the problem and not the person. And trying to move it from there has to be a winner in the situation to is there not some sort of mutual outcome where there can be the best in both worlds. And my simple tips is always just try and understand the situation and rather discuss the topics rather than engage directly with the person.
Definitely manage the problem, not the person. Absolutely a mantra worth standing by in a lot of these things. So I think one thing that I'd love to know is, have you guys had a client that you've loved working with? They are, as long as we don't pick favorites, they're kind of your unofficial favorite. And why are they your favorite in that context? Ames, who have you loved working with? And we don't have to name names, but just what made it your favorite client?
I think quite a new client of ours, one of the banking clients, just our key person, representative within that client that we speak to on a regular basis. Just the banter that we have with him has just been unreal. It's been great. We take things seriously, but there's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of giggles, and yeah, it just makes the whole conversation a lot more human as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I know who Amy's talking about, and it's great chatting to this client because he views you as a partner, like I mentioned before.
Yeah,
great banter that happens, but there's also time to be serious, and when the time's finished, he's back on the banter.
Yeah, exactly. But it's nicely aligned to the concept of like, we get stuff done, but we're not so serious that we can't. I see Wayne says, if I have accountability, what I say goes. If someone else has accountability, all I can do is advise the other party on how not to make a stupid question. The rest is up to them. As a consultant, you seek to empower them to make smart decisions. And sometimes people have to take accountability for that. So probably a good point as well. So
yeah, we touched on that earlier. That's spot on.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew, what makes your favorite client? So we've got banter and not always being serious. What makes your favorite client?
So I do have a client in mind, and it's more of a theme, but at the time when I kind of recently take over, we had a very, very senior team working on quite an impossible task. We were the kind of product owners of it, as well as the delivery engine around it and the experts within the organization. And we grinded. We absolutely grinded. We dealt with politics consistently, but our client stakeholder always celebrated. You know, we got to milestones, we got to the possible, and we always had a proper celebration. At the time, it was lunches and maybe a dinner or whatever else it was. They would sponsor budget towards it. We would help as well. And I think that culture of we all don't mind grinding as long as it's appreciated and the thank yous came out and there was, you know, some sort of celebration and that open communication, because that's a real partnership where you can actually say, I wouldn't have done this without you guys. And I want to show my appreciation. That was something that I think is, you know, in a true partnership really, really shines through for me.
Absolutely. Mike, what makes your favorite client?
I think again, it's for me, it's it's a theme of this conversation. It's around the partnership. When it's the customers that we become partners with, that makes it the best, because then it moves from an us and a them to a we. Now, how are we going to solve this problem? What are we going to do? How are we going to make things better? And just working together with the customer, that for me is what makes a really good customer. Because then, even if you have a problem, it's how do we solve this and how do we fix it? And it just makes working and delivery all that much better, because then you get into a team. Once you're all working together in the same team as a partnership, you can really, everyone's willing to make the commitment and to make it happen. And that's when, the magic happens, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a nice wrap up from Wayne is really that as a professional, we seek to arm our clients with the best possible information to make good decisions. And in any stakeholder interaction, it really is something we've said multiple times. It's about having that open communication and having that partnerships through that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always be someone's best friend, but it means that you have the trust of that person, that what you say is going to happen, and that transparency and accountability makes a huge difference. So I think from our side, if you guys have any further questions, feel free to throw them in. But I want to say thank you to all of you guys for being here and for sharing all of this knowledge and for always being an open door policy and having that accessibility to your knowledge and your support. I know it's helped me throughout my career, and I know it's helped a lot of our team members as well. So thank you. And if there are any further questions, you guys are welcome to leave them in the chat. But otherwise, that wraps us up for the first Speakers Forge of 2022. I think we can crack open a bottle of whiskey and maybe celebrate tomorrow night.